These two works were made by the same artist. Christian Rolfs was 29 when he painted Roman builders, and he knew how to make the body feel solid and a room feel real. 39 years later, he reduced a prisoner to black cuts and bare paper. By then, Rolfs had lost a leg, moved into a museum, begun printmaking at 58, and rebuilt his work so completely that the Nazis would later seize 412 pieces from German collections. Yet, in 1930, the city where he lived had opened a museum bearing his name. So how did the respected 19th century painter become exactly the kind of modern artist the Nazis wanted removed? Roman Builders shows the academic training Rolfs had already mastered. He learned anatomy, figure painting, and believable space at the art school in Weimar. At 15, Rolf suffered a serious injury or inflammatory condition in his right leg and spent roughly 2 years confined by it. A doctor named Ernst Stoller noticed the drawings he made during that period, encouraged him and helped him continue his education. Rolfs entered art school in 1870. 3 years later, after the condition returned, his right leg was amputated. He resumed his studies the following year. The illness changed his route into art. By the 1880s, Rolfs was working independently, selling paintings and receiving support connected with the Weimar court. He broke with the academic approach of his teacher Stroys in 1881 and had his first solo exhibition in 1889. His landscapes were already changing. Naturalism had taught him to describe the visible world carefully. Impressionism gave him a looser surface and a way to work directly from changing light and colour. Rolfs never treated either method as the final answer. By 1900, colour was carrying more of the structure. Then, at 51, he was offered something far more disruptive in another exhibition. He was invited to move into a studio connected to a new museum of modern art. The museum was in the western German city of Hagen. The collector Karl Ernst Osthaus wanted Rolfs to teach at an art school planned alongside his new Folkwang Museum. The school was never established, but the studio remained, and Hagen became Rolfs' home. This matters because Folkwang was showing new European art while it was still provoking arguments. Gauguin was shown there in 1903, Van Gogh followed in 1905. Rolfs met Edvard Munch in 1904 and Emil Nolde the following year. In 1907, the museum showed prints by Die Brücke, the young German expressionist group. Rolfs was older than all of them, and he never joined their movement. He tested what their work made possible without surrendering his own work to any of them. Around 1902 and 1903, he tried pointillism, also called neo-impressionism. Pointillists built pictures from separate dots and dabs of colour, allowing those colours to combine in the viewer's eye. Rolfs used the divided marks for a while, and then he abandoned the system. What remained was the idea that a painting did not have to hide the individual mark that made it. By 1907, the dots had opened into larger strokes. In 1911, Rolfs wrote that he was trying everything possible to get away from realism. He did not mean that the subject had to disappear. He meant that colour, line, and pressure no longer had to behave like obedient descriptions of the world. This is where his work becomes expressionist. The object remains, but the artist's response begins altering its shape. I love remembering artists and finding out about ones I may not have known. If you like this too and you're enjoying this video, please consider liking and subscribing. It really does mean a lot. Back to Rolfs. And he had not yet made his most important technical change. At 58, he took up a medium that forced him to choose what would print and what would remain bare. Rolfs began making woodcuts and linocuts around 1908. In relief printing, the artist cuts away the areas that will remain bare and inks the raised surface left behind. Rolfs inked the blocks with a brush and printed them himself. He rubbed the paper by hand and sometimes added pressure with a weighted cigar box. He rarely produced a fixed edition. One impression might use a different paper, ink, or pressure from the next, and he sometimes added colour afterwards. The Museum of Modern Art records 185 prints. In the sailing boat print, the mast and hull are enough to establish the boat. The white cuts make the wake and reflection. In The Prisoner, the same economy is applied to a body. The face is barely described, while the bent arms and hunched shoulders carry the figure. Then the First World War interrupted his work. For several months after it began, he was reportedly unable to paint. Religious subjects, which had appeared before the war, became far more important during it. Material shortages also pushed him further towards woodcut and watercolour. Figures became compressed, with less space around them and more weight carried by a few heavy shapes. Biblical figures and prisoners now held entire scenes together through outline and pressure. In 1919, Rolfs married Elena Vogt and received major exhibitions around his 70th birthday. By then, he had national recognition and a visual language that was recognisably his. Around the same time, he changed the material itself. Around 1919-1920, water tempera became increasingly central to Rolf's work. Tempera is a water-based paint with a stronger, more opaque body than ordinary watercolour. Rolfs soaked the paper, brushed or scraped paint away, and sometimes used a wire brush to expose lighter layers underneath. In Hyacinth Pot, the plant remains clear, but the pot, leaves and background are made from the same loose strokes. The object remains recognisable, but it no longer separates cleanly from the space around it. Rolfs had reached a late style that could easily have completed his career. Instead, illness moved him again. After pneumonia, Rolfs and Helena began spending part of the year near Ascona in southern Switzerland from 1927. He was 77. In granite houses, the buildings are readable through their roof lines and a few black outlines. The walls and hillside are made from the same marks. In church in Ticino, the church survives through its tower and a few dark windows. Pale strokes sweep across the walls and hillside, while blue breaks into the building itself. That same year, Hagen opened a museum bearing Rolf's name. He was 80. It looked like the final confirmation of a life that had survived illness, amputation, and repeated reinvention. 3 years later, the Nazis removed his name from it. The Nazis wanted control over German culture as well as politics. They promoted idealised, realistic images that supported their racial and national myths. Expressionism did not fit that programme. It distorted bodies, used unnatural colour, rejected academic finish, and allowed uncertainty into the image. Nazi propaganda called this degenerate art. The word was chosen to suggest sickness, criminality, and moral decay. It also allowed the regime to attack modernism as foreign, Jewish, communist, or hostile to the German nation, whether an individual artist fitted those labels or not. Rolfs was not Jewish, and he was not a young revolutionary. He was an 87-year-old member of the Prussian Academy and an honorary citizen of Hagen. That did not protect him. In 1937, the regime removed 412 of his works, from German public collections. His exhibitions were prohibited, Some accounts also report that he was forbidden to paint, although the exact scope of that order remains disputed. The Prussian Academy demanded that he resign. Rolfs refused to perform an act that would make their judgment look like his own admission of unworthiness. He died in his Hagen studio on the 8th of January 1938, less than 5 months after that refusal. Rolfs had begun as a court-supported painter who could construct believable bodies and spaces. By 1987, the Nazi state had removed 412 of his works from museums. The distance between those two facts took more than half a century. The city that removed his name now holds his archive and around 900 of his works at Osthaus Museum in Hagen. Some are displayed in the rooms where he once lived and worked. If you want another artist whose life is hidden in plain sight inside the work, watch my short film on Wilhelm Hammershøi. He painted his wife again and again, but in most of those paintings, he hid her face. Click to see it. It's on screen now.